Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Mormon Atheist, Apostate Congregation. I want to welcome you guys. I know it's been an incredible long time since I've made a video. I've been doing some traveling. Right now I'm down in Florida. Yeah, things have been good. Things have been moving. I did a couple of videos where we went to Missouri, to Florida. I went to Far West. I went to Independence. I went to Liberty. I went to Richmond, and the whole thing was a bust. Yeah, you can watch those videos and you can see what it was like for me to go see those places. So anyways, here we are back on track. Today's topic, we're going to be kind of introducing some new characters that you may have never heard of before. Possibly some of you have. Those two people, their names are Joel Tiffany and Charles Anton. Okay, and we're going to get into how this relates to the magical worldview of Joseph Smith and the entire idea of how this propagates the religion. Now when I say this stuff is Solomonic magic, okay, I think that scares a lot of you. He's doing money magic. Okay, that's what it's called. It's specifically called money magic of Solomon. Okay, you look at all the seals, the talismans, the parchments, all that kind of stuff. I don't want you to be scared because it's not really anything to be scared about. I mean, yes, the rituals and all that kind of, I personally do not believe in it. I don't practice it. None of this kind of stuff, right? I'm just interested in how it pertains to Mormonism and what those seals mean and the depths that they're willing to go to manipulate people, right? That's what I'm interested in. And so I don't want you guys to think this is like some weird satanic thing, I mean, originally, if you want to go back in the history of all this stuff, yes, it is weird and crazy, and I will be the first one to admit all of that stuff, right? Because it legit is. Like you can't deny that. You can't get around how weird Solomonic magic is. But it also intertwines with Freemasonry though, right? So this is not just Solomonic magic, right? It's mixed in with Freemasonry, right? Because you have to take into consideration the entire William Morgan factor, right? The Church of Masonry, all this kind of stuff, right? And how Solomonic magic plays into Masonry itself, right? Like it's very much a part of Masonry. Like when Masons refer to the craft, right? They're talking about the magic, right? That's Solomonic magic. I mean, trace this stuff back to its lineages, right? Like to its origins, right? And I mean, it's very plainly obvious. Hiram Abif, I mean, that's a huge red flag right there. I mean, come on, right? The Freemasons, Hiram Abif is the master Mason. Well, who is Hiram Abif? If you read your your treatise of Solomon, Apostate Congregation, you would know this, right? Of who Hiram Abif is, right? He's a pivotal part of King Solomon. So you have to kind of start from the beginning and read these, watch my videos, go back and watch my videos, Joseph Smith, Talisman, Joseph Smith, the Seer. I don't remember what the names of all of them are, but go back and watch those and you can see the progression that I personally myself make as I'm discovering these things as we're going, right? If you, congregation, those of you that have been following me from the beginning know that when I very first started bringing this information out to you, I was very hesitant on saying what I thought it was, right? I was all over, from Enochian magic to I was all over the board, right? But once you get into it, and once you start realizing the progression of the books, the magic books that these other podcasters talk about, and it makes no sense, right? And I actually do a timeline in one of my videos of the books, from the treaties of Solomon, the greater keys of Solomon, the Kabbalah, like the whole progression of how magic works, and I'm not doing like every single book, right? I'm doing like the main players, like you magicians out there know that the greater keys of Solomon, the lesser keys of Solomon, the Kabbalah, like all this stuff plays. And then when you get into these mainstream guys in the 1900s, Francis Barrett, that stuff Francis Barrett it's totally debunked, right? He's he's a fraud, right? He may have believed it, whatever, but the book itself that he wrote is completely discredited by a lot of people. And you can go on YouTube, you can look it up, you can find it out yourself. This information is very readily available to anybody looking for it and that wants to find it. That's the key, is you have to want to find this stuff, right? Answer the question, put it to rest. Is this folklore, right? Is this folklore? Google it, look it up, find it out. I'll bring you some stuff today and other videos in the past that you have seen already. This is not folklore. This is not rabbit's foots. Okay. Solomonic magic is extremely specific, and it's not to be messed with lightly. You know what I mean? Like the Masons are doing it. The Christians are doing it. It's heavy. It's heavy. And so when you see these videos and all this stuff of Joseph Smith drawing circles with the sword, cutting the heads off of chickens and goats, and they have to be black goats, and these are very much the story of Joseph Smith, right? So that's just a little bit. Like and subscribe to the channel, you guys, if you haven't already. That's very important. I get an incredible amount of messages from people that are just saying, I love your channel, I love your work. You're bringing out stuff that literally nobody's ever heard of, right? And it's, believe me, you guys, I get the same exact reaction when I tell people this stuff, right? It's like, hey, read Fraser magazine, but actually read the article though. Don't just look up Fraser. Oh, yeah, there's Fraser magazine. Go and read the article, The Original Prophet. That's what it's called, The Original Prophet. And oddly enough, Fraser magazine, I'm actually going to use that kind of as a point in today's topic as well, because in Fraser magazine, right off the get-go, they say nobody can explain the particulars of Joseph Smith. Nobody knows what he looks like, right? And so I do a video on Joseph Smith. Is Joseph Smith a real person? And I go into that. Excuse me. And there's several other books that also say the same thing. So let's get into today's topic. We're going to be debunking folklore. This is not folklore. This is Solomonic magic. Please look up the Pentacles of Jupiter, because those are the symbols that are on the talisman. Isn't it ironic that they call it the Joseph Smith Jupiter talisman? Okay, well, this is actually called the Pentacles of Jupiter is what it's actually called, right? Look those up and you will see all those signs and symbols, those exact signs and symbols. So when when you watch these videos of these Mormon guys talking about how the squiggly line is the star in the heaven, that's all BS, man. That's all string along stuff to sell their books. Okay, look it up, read it, actually inform yourself. Don't just look it up and say, oh, yep, there it is. Read it. Find out. Don't take my word for it. Read it. You'll see that the color blue is a pivotal piece of the puzzle, piece of the spell. So what that color means is in Solomonic magic, money magic of Solomon, the pentacles of Jupiter, right? In the pentacles of Jupiter, what the color blue means is when I want you to give me money, I give you something blue. Okay? What does the church do with their missionaries? They give them something blue to give away for free, right? The Book of Mormon is blue. And it's free. And they give that to you in return of you becoming baptized and doing what? Apostate Congregation, I know you know the answer to this. Pay your tithing. Okay? This entire spell, it's a spell. It's literally a spell. It's in the Lesser Keys of Solomon. You can look it up yourself. It's in the Lesser Keys. Look, Google money magic. Go to YouTube. Just go to YouTube. Look up on YouTube, Money Magic of King Solomon. It's as simple as that. It's literally as simple as that. And you'll see for yourself. You can Google it, Money Magic of King Solomon, and it will come up. The Pentacles of Jupiter will come up. Okay. So I don't know if this is actually an evil thing, though. Is it bad? I mean, yeah, he's duping everybody, and he put a spell, like literally the Mormons are under a spell. If you want to look at it like that, the Mormons literally are under a spell to give the church their money, 10% in tithing, right? I mean, it's comical to me. I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but it's not funny. This is not funny, but it is a real thing, though. Okay, and so let's get into who Joel Tiffany is here. Joel Tiffany, why is Joel Tiffany important? What does he have to do with anything? Okay, well, there's some people in the Necromancy Joseph Smith podcast world, okay, that keep repeating this piece of the church's story, right? Because they only use church sources, okay? They keep repeating the church's story of Joel Tiffany and how he, Martin Harris, briefly comes up to him and has a discussion about occultism. And then that's really all they say, like full stop, that's it. And so now Joel Tiffany, in his role in the LDS story is he is an occultist. Joel Tiffany is an occultist. Okay, and from there they completely smear the guy, right? Like they hardly talk about him. They just keep referring to him as an occultist, and they don't really say much information beyond that. That's kind of it. It's brief, it's fast, and it's glossed over. Well, who is this guy? You know, when I hear the word occultist, I automatically think, why is Martin Harris, a religious person, even associating with an occultist? Like, what does that mean, right? What does that mean? Who is this guy, right? Well, let's talk about who Joel Tiffany is, okay? So, Joel Tiffany, and how he relates to the Joseph Smith magical worldview. Okay, so let's talk about Joel Tiffany. How he was born September 6th, 1811. He attended, the guy is no dummy, right? He attended college. He got married and moved to a place called Elrya, 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 Ohio. 1835, he practiced law. In the 1850s, see, now this is where it switches. Okay. In the 1850s, he wrote periodicals that were called Devoted to Investigating the Spiritual Sciences. Okay. The spiritual sciences. Now, it's very important to note here, right? Joel Tiffany was never an occultist, right? He was interested in the occult, right? And he wrote about it. He wrote periodicals about it for 10 years. He wrote periodicals about it. I think I have the paper right here. What was it? 18. What? Well, hold on. Dang it! I had it written down. I lost it. I had it written down, but I forgot, or I didn't include it. But anyways, all right. So he wrote periodicals, right? For about 10 years, he wrote these periodicals, right? And so plus he wrote other books. He wrote 6 books altogether, right? So the guy is no dummy. Okay. You see what I'm saying? Okay. And we'll get into why this is important. And my source for this, I want to be clear, is the New York State Unified Court System, right? You just look up Joel Tiffany, because the reason why was he was the New York State reporter. He was the first New York State reporter. And so the guy is no dummy, right? In 1859, one of the periodicals that he wrote, okay, this is important. This is where he comes into Mormonism at, right? Joel Tiffany wrote a periodical called Interview with the Book of Mormon Witness, Martin Harris. That's the original name. That name later has been changed to, oh, dang it. I messed up my papers. I don't know. I messed up my papers. All right. Anyways, I'll put the link to what it was changed to. And I think I actually do have it in here, but we'll get to it, right? But so anyways, we'll keep going on. That periodical was called Interview with Book of Mormon Witness, Martin Harris. And I'll provide the link to that one and to the one that it was changed to, right? It's yeah. He was the New York State reporter. I just said he was the first president of the village of Hillsdale, Illinois in 1873. 1877, this was kind of an offshoot thing that I kind of randomly found while I was looking up Joel Tiffany, was in 1877, he got a patent for a refrigerated rail car for hauling, meats and produce and things of this. He wasn't the first nor the last. So, I just thought that was really cool, just to prove that, further prove that the guy is no dummy, and the church just muddies him heavily. Okay. He wrote 6 books. 3 of these are periodicals written over a period of time. He was never an occultist or any of the sort. He only wrote about it. So the guy is not an idiot, right? Well, so through the links that I provide, they'll tell a further story on Joel Tiffany, but I want to get into, well, he wrote this he wrote this periodical, right, called Interview with Book of Mormon Witness Martin Harris. Well, for heaven's sakes, what did he say? I got to know, right? Okay, so I looked it up, right? So, and Apostate Congregation, I want to be very clear to you. Literally everything in every single one of my videos, you can look it up. You can Google it yourself. I don't want you to believe me. That's the whole point of my videos is don't believe me. Look it up. Google it. Fact check me. I want you to fact check me. Everybody out there, watch every single one of my videos. Look up the sources that I recite, and by all means, fact check it. Hey, and because the reason why is you're going to find this information, plus you're going to find other stuff that I don't find and I don't recognize. And so it gets everything going, right? To be honest with you, as long as you find this book, I could care less if you believe me or not. I just want you to read this book, because these books that I talk about in my podcast here, to the Mormon worldview in general, is absolutely explosive, because none of these stories match. And that's kind of the point of all of these videos that I do, is to show how different all of these stories are, right? They're all so different. And I'm going to get into Martin Harris's interview right here, and I'm going to actually read to you what is in that book, right? Some passages that come out of that book. And then with your brain of 2024, I want you to think for yourself, what is the story that I know today, right? What am I told today? Okay. And what do I believe the story of Martin Harris, the golden plates, the spectacles, the witnesses, what is that story, right? And then when you go back and you watch, this, we're going to be talking about a periodical that came out in 1859, okay, in the 1850s, right? Joseph Smith died in 1844. So yeah, some time has passed, but not much. But this is Martin Harris's own words. This is an interview with Martin Harris. And the church, literally everything that anybody says, anything against the church or anything, they just muddy through the water. They say that's anti-Mormon, that's anti-this, that's anti-that. That person was of low value. He couldn't read. He was blind. He couldn't see or write. They just make the people look foolish or dumb or, things like this. And then when you go back, and in today's world, we can go back and look these people up. We know that Charles Anton, right? Charles Anton, we're going to get into him in a little while. We know that he was no dummy, right? You can go back and look at my videos I did on him, right? So we know this stuff. So what does Martin Harris say in his interview? So first of all, there's several sources that have this interview, have this on it, right? Just one of my sources was doctrineandcovenantcentral.org. You can go to this. The name of this interview, here it is. Here's what it's been changed to. So it's been changed to Martin Harris, 1859, interview with Joel Tiffany on early events in Mormonism. That's what it's been changed to. Okay. The original name, interview with Book of Mormon witness Martin Harris. That's the original name of the interview. It later got changed to 1859 interview with Joel Tiffany on early events in Mormonism. I'll post the links to this stuff. Okay. All right. So let's get into what he says. We have to keep in mind Charles Anton in the character page. Okay. We're going to get into him and how he may or may not be involved in this story. And that is the story of Charles Anton in this particular topic. Is he mentioned? Because it's important. He is an important figure. he authenticated the character page, if you remember, right? Well, does Martin Harris even mention him? We'll see. So Martin Harris says, September 22nd, 1827, Joe found the plates of gold, the Book of Life, or the Book of Mormon. Martin had a revelation a year before that God had some work for him to do. The plates were found at the north point of the hill. He never says Cumorah. He never says anything of the sort. He never names the hill in any of the literature I've ever seen. That hill has never been named Cumorah, right? In the 1800s literature. Okay. 2 miles north of the Manchester village, Joseph dug a well for Mason Chase, 24 feet deep. At the bottom was the stone. Okay, this story right here that he says that he's talking about, okay, this is Joel Tiffany's interview with Martin Harris. Okay, you have to remember the church says he's an occultist. That's it. He's out. Forget it. Well, they never mention he does an entire interview on the guy. That's a pivotal part of like Mormon history. You know, oh, whoops, we forgot about that, right? No, they're covering it up. They're telling you how bad of a person this guy is, so you won't go look at him. Well, this is his article, Joel Tiffany, okay? And there's a couple of other articles that he writes on Mormonism as well, okay? And none of them are favorable. Let's just say that, okay? So, anyways, this story right here is the same story that I'm about to tell you is what the church says. Joseph Smith went and dug a well for Martin Harris, and that's how they met. Okay, and then Joseph Sr., and they are talking, and the whole story right here is about the church says is about Joseph Sr. and Martin Harris and Joseph Smith Jr. Well, this is the same exact story, but different names, okay? And you'll recognize the names, okay? He dug a well for Mason Chase, 24 feet deep. I don't know if any of you have ever dug a hole, okay? But have you ever dug a hole 24 feet deep by hand? I mean, that's a feat, okay? By the time I'm done digging that hole, I'm going to be seeing shit too. You know what I'm saying? At the bottom was the stone. Joe said he would bind the stone on his eyes. He's telling this to Martin Harris, Mason Chase, and run a race through the woods. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. That was with Martin Harris. And so this is Martin telling the story, right? Remember? Martin then tells the story about how he was picking his teeth and drops the pen that he was using. Okay, this is Martin telling the story, right? Joseph uses the stone in the old white hat, he says, and finds the pin. He talks about, he goes on and he talks about old Mr. Stowell, right? He says and thinks, so Martin doesn't even remember Mr. Stowell's name. He says he thinks his name is Josiah, but he never mentions him. And all of the other literature that I read, it's always Mr. Stowell as well. It's never Josiah. He doesn't know. So that story right there as Mr. Stowell, right, is literally the same story as Joseph Smith Sr. You can look that up yourself and you can read it. He says, he goes on and this I thought was pretty interesting, right? Martin Harris goes on to say that the Hales would not approve the marriage of Emma and Joseph. And the reason that they would not, but he never says Emma. He never says her name, Emma. He says his wife, right? He says the reason was because she was of age and he was not. Emma was older than Joseph. That's why they would not approve of his marriage. Okay. The church says because he was a treasure digger. That's why they wouldn't approve of his marriage. Right. Well, this is Martin Harris saying in 1859 that Emma was older than Joseph, and that's why. And Joseph was not of age. Okay. So, and that's in when did they get married? In 1827, I believe, right? 1827, Apostate Congregation. You can fact check me on that. I believe that's what it was. Anyways, all right. So Joseph was not of age, right? So then he goes on and he says that in this same explanation, Martin Harris goes on to say that Joe hid the plates in an old black oak treetop, which was hollowed out, right? Okay, so this is the hollowed out story. This is the second one now that I've heard of this story of being in a hollowed out oak tree. But this story is taking place in Palmyra, though, right? So the other story that we referred to in H.H. Bancroft, if you remember, right? Apostate, you did watch that video. But that one is in Canada, though. He's in Canada. And this one, it's kind of a similar story, but he's in Palmyra. Okay, so so then he goes on and he gives a description of the plates. Okay, now this is Martin Harris. Okay, this is in his own words in the pamphlet that Joel Tiffany wrote. But if you look at the church history of who Joel Tiffany is, they say he's an occultist, forget about him, that's it. And that's literally all they say about him. But then when you go and study the guy, a whole bunch of information comes up about him, right? So then let's talk about how Martin Harris describes the plates to Joel Tiffany. Okay, so he says there were 4 stones that were set up on a flat stone. There were 4 stones set up on a flat stone. On the top was oval of the upper side, flat on the bottom. Beneath this was a little platform which the plates were laid, and 2 stones set in a bow of silver, by which means the plates were translated, were found underneath the plates. Okay. Well, that's H.H. Bancroft has a similar story like that. But the locations are different. Okay. One's in Canada and the other one is in Palmyra. So then he goes on to describe the plates. Okay. They're 7 inches wide by 8 inches in length. This is Martin Harris telling Joel Tiffany the description of the plates. This is very, very important right here, okay? 8 inches in length and were thickness of plates of tin. And when piled on top of the other, they were altogether about 4 inches thick. And they were put together on the back by 3 silver rings, so they would open like a book, kept in a cherry box. Okay, so the description of the plates we have in our other videos, we have Orson Pratt's description of the plates. We have Joseph's description of the plates. We have David Whitmer's description of we have so many different descriptions of the plates. none of them are the same, you understand, right? You see how these stories change through time, and they go and they're different, right? Okay, so watch the other videos, and I give all my references, all my study guides, all that stuff. It's all in the video. You can literally look everything up, Apostate Congregation. Never take my word for any of this. Look it up yourself. Okay, so then he goes on and he describes the bow. Okay, the two stones set in a silver bow were about 2 inches in diameter. Okay, now you have to remember, what does the church tell you about the bow? They're oversized, they're large, they're huge, they're massive. This is Martin Harris, apostates. Listen, the two stones set in a silver bow were about 2 inches in diameter, perfectly round, and about 5/8 inch thick at the center, but not so thick at the edges where they came into the bow. They were joined by a round bar of silver about 3/8 inch diameter and about 4 inches long, which with the two stones would make 8 inches. I'm not sure how they get that math, but okay. The stones were white, like polished marble, with a few gray streaks. Okay. So that description is like the 15th description. Okay, you apostates, go back and watch the other videos. You'll see, read the sources that I give you, and you'll literally read this stuff word for word, what I'm saying to you. Okay, so then Martin Harris goes on and says that he starts talking about how he's forbidden to say anything about how he saw the plates, except for by the power of God, right? Let me repeat that, okay? You remember Doctrine and Covenants 3 through 19, okay? But if you want to be, 1 through 19, but if you want to be specific, 3 and 10 are all the threats, especially to Martin Harris, right? And so when he says right here, I am forbidden to say anything about how he saw the plates, I have no doubts in my mind, except for by the power of God. He was threatened by the power of God is what happened here, okay? Yeah, I mean, it's baffling. This stuff is baffling, apostates. So keep in mind the weight, keep in mind the dimensions of these things, okay? 2 inch of the plates, okay? I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping here. 7 inches wide by 8 inches in length, okay, and about 4 inches thick. 7 inches, okay, about 4 inches thick, roughly, okay. Harris says he hefted them, weighing about 40 or 50 pounds. Okay, now this part in particular, I want to say how many historians, podcasters, all this stuff, people that talk about Mormonism, all this stuff, use this exact phrase right here. There was just a podcast the other day where they were literally making fun of the word hefted. Hefted. Oh, they're hefted. Okay. 40 or 50 pounds. Okay. But they're literally not even talking. They're not doing any credit to this article whatsoever. They never mention the article. They never talk about the article. They never talk about Joel Tiffany. They never say anything, because this piece has been repeated so much that it's just kind of been absorbed into the other stories, right? William Dixon's book, I can literally name 10 authors right now that talk about this, okay? And most all of them recite everything out of this Joel Tiffany book right here, right? So but they never give him credit. They never say anything. And that's a discredit, I believe, to Joel Tiffany and to the other Mormons, because Mormons don't know this. Literally nobody knows who Joel Tiffany is. You're talking to LDS folks, and if you say this name, they would have no idea who you're talking about. Okay. Well, the guy's recited throughout Mormon history, but he's an occultist. You understand? Okay, so Joe gave the plates to his mother through the window, Martin Harris says, right? He gave the plates to his mother through the window, uncovered. So Lucy Mack saw the plates, okay, uncovered. Harris says that Joseph wrote to his brother-in-law, Alva Hale, to flee because the heat was so bad that people were not believing him, and he was so like under, one guy like yells, we should tar and feather you, right? And it's just mayhem for a while. A couple of the way that he puts it is it was only a few weeks, and they came up with this scheme that he should flee because everybody literally knew that the reason why he says they all left was because all of the other treasure diggers, they felt that they should be in on the cut, that Joseph is trying to profit off of this, and they want their money, and so they form mobs, and this is why they have to leave Palmyra, is because the mob is forming. Now, this is Martin Harris's own words, Apostate Congregation. I want you to understand. This is not me making this up. This is not my conjecturism. This is not my opinion. This is what Martin Harris is saying in his interview with Joel Tiffany. Okay, and there's other sources, right? There's a wiki source. So you can go to Tiffany's Monthly, Volume 5, Number 4, Mormonism, episode number 2. That's what actually all of this is from, episode number 2. Now, I'll get into why episode number 2 is important and the significance of that, but let's continue going. Okay. So as this interview progresses, he starts to, once it's finished, once he's kind of finished the interview with Martin Harris, he goes on to give his own opinion, right? And he calls Martin Harris the real father of Mormonism. Okay, Martin Harris is the real father of Mormonism. Martin Harris goes on to say that he considers the Brighamites apostates and being under the influence of the devil. Now, in the context of this, because context is very important, okay, this is where the split. They talk about how Martin and Joseph, they created the original church, and there are several other sects that branch off of their church, and the Brighamites are one of those sects. So it literally is not the church of Joseph Smith. The Brighamite church, the LDS church, literally is not the church of Joseph Smith. Let me repeat that once again. The Brighamite church literally is not the church of Joseph Smith. Okay? This is Martin Harris's own words. Go back to my other videos, and I give sources, I give all of that stuff, and you can literally read this stuff for yourself. You can look it up. I give you everything. You can look it up and read it for yourself. And we'll get into why that is actually important as we progress in today's topic, because this periodical that I'm talking about, there's 3 parts. it ends like 3/4 through the second part. So the third part is missing to time. I cannot find it anywhere. I can't find it. I cannot find an entire copy of it. I can't find it. Trust me, I've looked. So it just ends. But how does it end? How does William Dixon talk about Joseph Smith? We'll get into it. Okay. So Martin Harris considers the Brighamites apostates and being under the influence of the devil. Harris calls them the latter-daily devils. That's what Martin Harris calls them, is the latter-daily devils. Okay, Tiffany says, we believe it to be a romance. He's talking about the Book of Mormon now, right? The translation, and this is later on in the article where he's going through and giving his own personal opinion about the Book of Mormon. He says, we believe it to be a romance of very low order, destitute of philosophical, moral, and literal merit. Damn, that stings. Oof. We do not believe there is any substantial truth in its historical statements. That's from Joel Tiffany. That's a statement, direct quote from Joel Tiffany. Tiffany later, and so now we're going to start getting back into the magic, right? But one thing that I want you to understand when you read all of this stuff that I tell you, never once when it comes to Martin Harris and the Martin Harris story, does he ever say anything about any character page. He never says anything about Charles Anton. Nothing, zero. If you go to outside sources, I cannot beat that into your heads enough, Apostate Congregation. If you are going to argue Mormonism through the church source, I don't want to hear you. Because to me, you are an apologist. I don't care how against the church you are. If you are only using church sources, which several of you out there literally have stated on video, some of you, I can actually give you the time that you said it, okay? You only use church sources. That's not okay. Okay, an apologist only uses church sources. We want outside sources. We're hungry. The church lied to us. I don't care what the church says. So what the church says, I'm going to take that story. Apostate Congregation, I want all of you to understand right now, literally every single story the church says about Joseph Smith, you can literally look this stuff up. I don't care which one you want to just, think, whatever, look it up. It's not what you think. It's not what you've been told. It's not what you know. When you go back in time and you go into the 1800s and you start reading these books and these outside source information material of what these people are saying, they literally have no stake in the game. They're just reporters. They're reporters. Joel Tiffany what he's doing right now is he's not an occultist. His pamphlets are about the spiritualism, right, of the occults. He's interested in them. He's writing about them. And Mormonism is one of his subjects. And so he's getting the story of Martin Harris. That's why he's talking to Martin Harris. It's not a one-off chance that Martin Harris goes up and says, hey, man, do you think this is No, dude, that's not what's happening here. That's not what's happening here. You read this stuff in context and you will clearly see that's not what's happening here. Okay? So Tiffany goes on. We're going to get back into the magic now. Tiffany goes on and he says that he believes, okay, now he's saying in his time, in 1859, of what we know of the occult in that day, 1859, okay? You got to remember, we're going back in time, okay? So in 1859, according to Joel Tiffany, according to their beliefs in 1859, the practices that Joseph Smith and company was doing in the 1820s and 30s, in his time, he would be called what you would say a medium of certain, and he actually says certain extent he was honest when he was translating the work. So in the medium world, now Joel Tiffany is where you start getting into the folk magic. Okay, that's this statement right here is where the folk magic comes in, and this is also where the all of these Mormon authors that write about this stuff, they have taken this piece and pretty much copied and pasted it and said, oh, this is folk magic, totally glossing over Solomonic magic, completely glossing over Solomonic magic. Okay. Tiffany refers to Smith as a clairvoyant. You see, now we're getting into these folk magic words. Okay. We're getting away from the Freemasonry, right? We're in 1859 now. The Church of Masonry, right, is starting to kind of, that story is going away through time, right? And Joseph Smith died, right? When did he die, though, right? Okay. He also refers to, he names off the founders, and there's no David Whitmer. There's a Levi Whitmore, but no David Whitmer. A Levi Whitmore. Okay. So this story ends in part 2. Okay. Like I said, halfway, about 3/4 of the way through part 2. There is no part 3 to the story. I cannot find it. It is a 3-part periodical, but I personally cannot find it. Maybe some of you guys out there can. If you can, please comment, because I would really like to read the rest of it, because it really starts getting good and then it like ends. Okay, well, this is how it ends right here. I'm going to tell you, spoiler alert. Okay, this ends in part 2 of part 3 series, saying that Joseph Smith is not the same guy. The Joseph Smith that everybody venerates upon his death is not the same Joseph Smith that originally started the church with Martin Harris. It's not the same guy. Now, here's where my claims come in. Okay. If you go to my comments and you go to my other, or I mean, not my comments, my community page, and you go to my other videos, you'll see that I searched all kinds of newspaper articles of the day, and Joseph Smith died in 1834. He got his leg amputated and he died 3 days later. You can go to my community page and you can see the article. You can read it. You can actually go to the website. I think I actually put the link on, like, yeah, the link is on there. There's also a photo of it. But you can play with it yourself and you can mess around with those are archival papers. So they're, now I'm going to say, you can believe like today, whatever you want to believe in today's newspaper. If you want to take that same mentality to back then and say, well, whatever, I don't believe that because whatever. But there's several articles that actually say Joseph Smith died in 1834. He got his leg amputated and died 3 days later. This article in Joel Tiffany backs that up. Okay. Fraser Magazine backs that up. William Dixon, his book in 1869 called New America backs that up. Because in William Dixon's book, New America, he says that Eliza Farnham is Joseph Smith's wife, and she is the real priestess of Mormonism, is what he says. And he names their kids, and none of them are the kids that we think of when we think of Joseph Smith. And he dies in, and then she separates and goes and starts but if you look up Eliza Farnham, she is, everything, Google, everything says she is was really big into the feminist movement and literally says nothing about Mormonism whatsoever. So here we have 4 sources that all say Joseph Smith, well, 5, I mean, I can go on and give you more if you'd like, but that the Joseph Smith that died is not the real Joseph Smith. He's not the real person. That Joseph Smith died in 1834. So this is why in the newspaper articles, when you look this stuff up, you will find in 1842, they start in 1842, they start calling him the imposter. Joseph Smith, the imposter. Okay. And all of the articles are saying this, not in the sense of he's an imposter as far as religion or anything like that, but in the sense of it's not the same guy. He's an imposter. He's not the same guy. Okay. It's a different guy. And he dies. There's another article in 1842 that this Joseph Smith dies. Well, lo and behold, in 1844, another one happens. And in all of these, they're all saying in the 42 articles and in the 44 articles, in the 42 ones, they're like, wait a minute, didn't this guy die? Like, who is this guy? And they literally refer to him as the imposter. This guy's an imposter because he died 10 years ago, right? He's already dead. So then the 42 article comes out, he dies again. And now they start, the 44 article comes out. And now they call him the imposter prophet. The imposter prophet now. And they all know that it's not the real guy. Like, everybody knows this story. All of the newspaper articles are all writing this story. Okay. So that's important information right there. Let's see. Now, this encounter that the church says is not a brief encounter. It's not brief. This is a lengthy encounter, and Tiffany and Martin Harris both say in their words in that article that it was over a period of a couple of days. And so this was a lengthy thing. There's a reason for this meeting, though, right? It's a planned event discussing the LDS Church. Joel ends this article by going into how Joseph Smith died, and that Joseph was not the real Joseph, but an imposter. Okay, I just told you that. So how does this relate to Solomonic magic? Okay, well, this is not folk magic. That's my point. This is not folk magic. These people, okay, are not doing what the church is saying they're doing. That's my point of all of my videos. The church has discredited these people so bad and has literally hijacked all of their stories. And Charles Anton, Martin Harris, I mean, they literally scorn Martin Harris. It says in the Book of Mormon, if you don't believe us, we will scorn you. It's till the end of time, right? That's in First Nephi, like chapter 2, at like the end of chapter 2 or 3 or something like that. The last 2 verses, like the last 3 verses of like chapter 2 or 3 in First Nephi. Okay. So I want to be very clear to you, though, that Solomonic magic is very specific. Okay. I said this in the beginning. It's very specific. It's not folk magic. Okay. It's not to be kind of trifled with. Like, you don't want to go into it lightly, right? I don't believe in this stuff. I don't practice it. But from what I have seen of it, you can look this stuff up on YouTube and how they practice the money magic ritual, what exactly that looks like, right, in today's time. And you can just mentally imagine Joseph Smith, his mother, his father, his brother, Hiram, and they're doing this seance, right? It's literally a seance, right? Right? Joseph Smith was a necromancer. What does that mean? Put all of these pieces together, everybody, Apostate Congregation. These are not separate individual things. This is all one practice. It all goes together. It's all combined. It all goes together. And if you look up in the Lesser Keys of Solomon, you will clearly see this. And these podcasters and folks today, they try to make it sound like they're separate individual things. Like they had a a witching rod and, you know, things like that, you know. And well, I mean, they're dumbing it down so incredibly bad for you, the viewer. They're not doing you justice. They're not giving you service. They're doing you a very big disservice, to be honest with you, because they're not telling you the whole story. They're giving you a piece, so they're leaving that room for speculation. So now everybody's speculating, and now we can write books and we can do podcasts and we can sell t-shirts and we can do all this stuff because now everybody's speculating. Well, no, we're ending the speculation. There's no more speculation. This is Solomonic magic. It's Solomonic money magic of Solomon. Money magic of Solomon, the pentacles of Jupiter. Look it up. You'll see Joseph Smith talismans. You'll see the parchment papers. You'll see it. You'll see it. Okay. That's how this relates. Okay. And so it's a very big deal. Okay. And I want to reiterate, he never mentions the character page. He never mentions Martin or Charles Anton in any of the interviews that I've ever read or any of the like source documents that talk about Martin Harris. And believe me when I say there's not many. Okay. He never mentions. The only people that ever mention Charles Anton or Joel Tiffany in the manners that they do is the church. And to me, that's not okay. They're selling these people out to progress their religion. And I'm not okay with that because these people are not who they say they are. They're not. They're not. Okay. So that's kind of all I got for today. Guys, I want to tell you, one thing I forgot to mention right off the top. So I did do some travels to Missouri, if you keep in mind, right? Or if you remember. While I was there, I went to Temple Lot. Okay. In Independence. Well, just so happens that what is the original church of Joseph Smith? It's called the Church of Christ, everybody. You know that. Okay. I don't even have to ask you that, apostates. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Okay. So anyways, while I was there, I got a Book of Mormon. Notice it's different. Notice it's different, apostates. It's different. Okay. And guess what? We also got a Book of Commandments. Do you know what the Book of Commandments is? This is what you would call the Doctrine and Covenants. And wouldn't you know that it's not in the Book of Mormon? They're two separate books. Well, why would that be, Apostate Congregation? Because Joseph Smith's original prophecies is not the Book of Mormon. It's the Book of Commandments. This is according to the Church of Christ. Okay. The Book of Mormon didn't come until some time later. It's still 1830, you know, all those dates line up and everything, but the Book of Commandments was first. And then it was, the Book of Mormon was interpreted. So the commandments first. And believe me when I tell you, they are different. They are very different. Okay. The numbers of the commandments are different, first of all. Some of the locations are different. Some of the people in the commandments are different. They're different people. So it is a very different book. So once again, to reemphasize the entire point of my podcast is how different this story is over time and how just it changes willy-nilly on a dime. Who cares what anybody thinks or says, because what we say is the right way. And, you just, yeah. So I will be doing some videos about these books. I just barely started reading this one. I have thumbed through this one. And yeah, they're different. They're different because look, here I got my 1984 Book of Mormon. Right? This is my 1984 Book of Mormon, and I opened it up to Doctrine and Covenants, as you can see. So apostates, I highly recommend you like and subscribe to the channel, first of all, and also read this material. Don't take my word for any of this stuff. I present it to you. You can read it. You can make up your own mind, whatever you want to do. It's whatever. I'm just putting the stuff out there for people to do whatever you want to with. But I do think, though, now here I'm going to get into my own personal opinion. I do think, though, that these people that are out here saying they're these ex-Mormon podcasters, there's these ex-Mormon people, and they're really not. Okay. What are you doing? Like, you're going to get called out. Right? Eventually, once people start reading this material, and they're going to see you just like I see you. So you say you're ex-Mormon, you say you're excommunicated, you say all this kind of garbage stuff, right? But how, I mean, I'm not here to say like how ex-Mormon are you or anything like that, but I'm saying, are you really an ex-Mormon when you only use church sources? That's my argument. You only use church sources. So how ex-Mormon are you if you're only using church sources? Go outside of the box, right? Get out, man. Get out. You're already there. So now start selling your books, start writing your books on how wrong you were. Or write them about how you're just leading people on. Okay? You're just leading people on. That's all you're doing. And once they start reading this kind of material and actually start learning what kind of BS you folks out there are spouting, they're going to see you. They're going to see you. Okay? You are literally selling books. That's all you're doing. You're not giving any kind of truth. You're not giving any kind of anything. You're just selling books. You're leaving speculation open. And we're here looking for answers. We want answers, right? We're saying, hey, we don't believe in this stuff anymore. We got duped. We got whatever your story is, right? As to why you have left the church, right? You're looking for legit answers. And so when you get these podcasters and these guys that leave this stuff open for speculation, right? And then they make fun of people like me for bringing you out like this kind of stuff, right? I'm sorry if it's unpleasant for you to hear this, but this is legitimate stuff. What I say in my videos is totally legit. You can look it up. Don't believe me, look it up. Come to your own conclusion. And so when these guys give you this disservice of doing these podcasts and they don't give you the entire truth and they leave it open for speculation, that's not okay to me. Like, that's not okay to me. I'm sorry. I'm looking for answers, and I want somebody that's going to, I may not like what I hear, but at least you're being honest, right? And then that's up to me to decide what to do with that information, right? Just like you, right? You may not like what I have to say, but I'm putting it out there, and you can do with it whatever you want to. You can choose to believe it or choose not to believe it, or it makes no difference to me because I already don't believe it. So it makes no difference to me. And I find it very interesting, these books on how the church has literally besmirched all of these people. That's what's fascinating to me, is how these people are all against the church and they all write like some kind of a bad article, or they have an opinion, and the church has adopted like Edward Beadle, James Edward Beadle. The guy was never a Mormon. He just wrote about him, but the church has an entire write-up about how he was baptized and he apostatized, and but he was never a Mormon though. in all of his, in all, not in all of his, like, I just read the guy. You can read his own work, right? Look him up. You can read his own work. It's called Life in Utah by James Edward Beadle. But he was not a member of the church, though. That's the point, right? These people have been totally hijacked, and the church has done such a disservice of that, right? That's what fascinates me. And then these guys continue this story. So, all right, I've ranted enough, and I've gotten myself into trouble now. I never talk about others. Do unto others, right? The golden rule. So, all right, guys, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like I said in the beginning of the video, you guys are sending me messages about how you can't subscribe. I understand that. I get that. I understand that. You know, I guess the only way I can say is, you know, just watch the videos and like them. You know, if anything else, just watch them, you know, whatever. You don't have to subscribe or whatever. Just watch the videos, maybe donate or something like that, you know, because these things aren't cheap, right? And I don't, you know, time, you know, now that I'm living down here in Florida, it's definitely not cheap. So, like, it takes a lot to bring these videos to you guys, actually. So, yeah, feel free to donate. I put in most of the videos, I got a Venmo thing on there. You can subscribe to or like or whatever, you know, whatever. But yeah, feel free to donate. So, all right, guys, until next time, I don't know what I'm going to be working on, because I'm working on so much stuff. There is so much information out there. Once you start looking at outside sources, the information just opens up, because the church, when you use church sources, there are no sources. All you have is the church and what other people are saying within the church. Those are church sources. They're church members talking about other church people doing churchy things that are talking about church sources that are other church members. So those articles and those paragraphs and those things and all that stuff, those are all church sources. They don't count. Boom, they don't count. They don't count. You cannot use a church source to validate a church source. Go outside, use outside sources, and you will see these stories are very different, very different. Okay, apostates, thank you very much. And I will see you guys next Sunday at 6 p.m. Thank you.